Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here. So we'll start out with a little exercise, life reflection, if you will. I often do this in real time, but you can follow along if you have a piece of paper, or you can do this on your phone. These are dimensions of life that we try to optimize for, and these will be different for every single one of us. For me, I put health up front. I put family next. We have service to others on this dimension. We'll then jump down to friendships, relationships, codepoxy, career is one of those dimensions, travel, adventure, and eventually education, reading, just becoming more knowledgeable intellectually. And then you can say, okay, at the center is a 0, and then you say, okay, you can go up to a 10, and you can start to sketch out where you are. And there are different ways to do that. We'll start with 2023, which is, a reflection on last year. Where was I at that point? Health was bad, family great, service okay, friendships, relationships okay, career was going well, great travel, a great adventure, a couple of stranding myself on an island for survival adventures. And then you connect these and you get to a radar chart, if you will, of what your life looks like at the time. And then you can juxtapose that to a different time frame. You can say, okay, let's look at today. How have these dimensions changed? Significant improvement on health. Family took a bit of a hit. Friendships was okay. Service to others has actually improved. And then you sketch, you combine these dots and get a fresh picture of where you're at. Now, the question is, can you get to a perfect 10 across the board? Can you create sort of that perfect circle in your life? And I think you can do this exercise as an individual. You can do it as a family, which we've done. We took the letters of our last name, turned that into family values, and are doing this exercise. And then, of course, you can do that as an organization. And as I reflect over these we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary as Codepoxy. As I reflect over those 10 years, I think there are different stages, right? The early days, which we'll look at first, the blue line, it all started with why we started this brand in the first place. In 2004, I was working for a nonprofit organization that was dedicated to the elimination of child labor on the Indonesian archipelago. And that was a really wonderful experience, impactful in the sense that we took several hundred kids from fishing platforms and factories, human trafficking type situations back into their communities, into their schools, worked with local and municipal and federal government to pass anti-child labor legislation, really impactful in the sense, but also really eye-opening, right? I'm from Germany originally, so I grew up in an environment where I didn't have to worry about shelter and healthcare and education. It was just given, it was handed to me. And these kids and their families were born, as is the reality for, a large, I know I'm preaching to the choir, for a large, percentage of the world population were simply born in a hard place, where that was not the reality, and they had to make really hard choices. And that's at the core of why we started Codepoxy in the first place. My co-founder had very similar experiences in Latin America, and we felt strongly, right, that we wanted to take advantage of the sheer luck of the draw, no merit of our own, of where we were born, and built an organization around the notion of recognizing that talent and aspiration and love is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. And so that allowed us, or that led us to this idea of building a human-centered brand that connects, adventurers who seek that sort of discovery and connection through travel, and find ways to create these super fans around this notion of, doing good. And we'll play a little video. This was we held these events in the early days. It was called the Questival. It's a 24-hour outdoor adventure race. We built an app around it that guided people through the experience. They had several challenges to choose from that would expose them to the values that we as a brand stand for. And this was the kickoff. It's over 4,000, millennial Gen Zs all wearing our backpacks, and we're swearing them in to do good over that 24-hour period.
Good, do, good, do. Good, a little bit louder. Good, start rising up. Good, do, good, do, good, do, good, do, good,
still gives me goosebumps when I see this video, like being on stage and seeing that tremendous enthusiasm around the notion of doing good and sort of creating that movement around that has been really, really rewarding as we're building this brand. Also in those early years, we laid the foundation for a very circular approach to building product. We recognize that there's a tremendous amount of waste in the, for sure, fashion supply chain. Same holds true for gear. The factory in the Philippines that we were working with, whole warehouses full of excess material. Nothing wrong with it. Perfect, beautiful material, just small rolls left over from bulk production runs from various brands. So we came up with a system to basically empower the sewers to make the design decisions themselves instead of us exactly speccing what material, what fabric goes where. We let them decide based on the availability of that dead stock and turn that into a beautiful line of product that was sort of like this amazing example of win-win-win, right? We're helping to reduce the dead stock in the supply chain. We're up-leveling the creativity of these sewers, and since it's trash in the eyes of the factory, really, really strong gross margin. So it's just a beautiful sort of foundation for a much more circular approach to product design and development. What we didn't have in the early days, I pulled this from a board meeting, board deck. We didn't have profits. We were burning $300,000, $400,000 in the early years, in the early months, right? This was about a year after we started, and the only reason we could do that was that we were able to bring in investors and partners that believed in us. And then success came, right? We grew tremendously, 70% CAGR. COVID was an absolute boost for the outdoor industry, 90% growth in 2022. Amazing enthusiasm in terms of NPS score. We built out through the Cotopaxi Foundation our impact program. We're able to donate significant amounts to our in-country partners, and we're able to build the team, attracted some fantastic partners such as Kirsten Green here from Forerunner Ventures in San Francisco, and Ellie Wheeler, and Lauren Iveson, and Brooke, and Cecilia from Bain Capital, who's still on our board today. And we're able to build out a tremendous team. So we're doing really well on all these dimensions. It was sort of the golden days, right, in terms of building a very robust circular impact program around what we call our 3 Rs, where all our product, 98% of our products are either repurposed, recycled, or responsibly sourced. And then through the foundation, we're having these tremendous impact. So that was sort of, it felt like we did have it all, right, during those years. That's the red curve. And then 2023 happened. The industry, like most consumer industries, post-COVID, over-inventoried, interest rates, inflation, significantly depressed consumer spending, and the industry hit a wall hard. We had millions of dollars of product on the boat, en route to our key accounts, and they just canceled these orders. And so it was a hard reality, and this was tough, like as a founder, to go through. We had built the infrastructure to support 70 to 90% growth, and then suddenly it stalled, right? And we had to make some really, really hard decisions. And we got some of them right on that people dimension, but we also screwed up on some. And so that was hard. We lost some of sort of the magic. We always wanted Cotopaxi to be a highlight in people's career. And it was a hard time as we went through that and had to build that muscle to adjust to that reality. And so that begs the question, okay, so is he right? Like the Chicago School of Thought, stop worrying about impact, right? Like focus on making money and then distribute these profits and let your shareholders deal with the humanitarian aspect. And in a situation like that, right, it's easy to say like this is actually the maxim that you should operate under, but we felt strongly that was not the right approach. I'm sorry, this is a little small. In 2023 was the first year that we weren't profitable in several years, and yet we gave, and 2/3 of that loss was actually due to the money that we gave to our foundation of $1.5 million. And that's because we felt so strongly that that's who we are. That dimension, that purpose, circularity, and sustainability, that's who we are as a brand. If we give that up, who are we, right? We sort of lose our identity. And we doubled down on circularity. This was a program that we just launched a couple of months ago called Renovo, where we took our own dead stock from insulated outerwear, returns, damaged, blemished product, as well as fleece products, and turned it into a new product working together with Portland Garment Factory in a fashionable line of product that actually flew off the shelf, sold out within 36 hours, that entire line. And so we despite the challenges that we faced from an economic perspective, we doubled down on sort of these core brand purposes. And the reason we do that is that the work's not done, right? I mean, we've made tremendous progress. And again, I know many in the room here, you work with these numbers every day, right? If you compare over the last 200 years, the percentage of the world population living under $2.15 in inflation-adjusted dollars, went from over close to 80%, right, of the world population living under extreme poverty to, drop below single digits for the first time around, in the 2010s. But it's been remarkably stable since then. Unfortunately, we have not seen progress over the last 5 to 10 years. COVID actually made it worse. New infection rates around malaria and tuberculosis have actually stalled. The development has been very unevenly distributed. Yes, we've lifted billions of people out of poverty, but there's pockets in sub-Saharan Africa and in South America that are persistently poor. And so the work's not done, and we feel that responsibility, and that's why we hold on to those principles despite sort of these economic challenges. And so that takes me back, right? Can you have it all? In 2021, my brother was diagnosed with an aneurysm on his aortic root. It was deemed at risk of immediate rupture, so he was rushed into open heart surgery. He did great, everything went well, and he is fine, but since there's a significant genetic component to that condition, I was tested too, and no surprise, I have a dilated aortic root as well. And so my doctor told me, okay, you have to watch your, hypertension makes it worse, increases the risk of an aneurysm, and you have to watch your blood pressure hawkishly. At the time, I was overweight, under-exercised, focused on work way too much. And he said, okay, you got to start blood pressure medication, right? And so I sat there, and I was looking at that little pill and could say, okay, I can now take this for the rest of my life for a condition that is 100% linked to my lifestyle choices, or I can do something about it. And so made a significant change, switched to a largely plant-based diet, lost about 70 pounds, and all the health markers improved and sort of took care of that. That also meant that this summer, my parents who still live in Germany, my mom is a wonderful, wonderful chef and cook. Amazing German food, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern. So I had to call her and say, Mom, I'm going to reject most of your cooking from henceforth. She was not happy about that. She expresses love through food. We as a family, we come together through culinary experiences. And so that's why I dropped on the family richness, right? That dropped. Travel is the same thing. When I travel, I love to explore local cuisines and fully embrace anything that's being served. And so I don't do that anymore. And so that's why that dropped a little bit. And so the question, can you have it all? I think the answer is no. Probably not all, and not all at the same time. And you know what? Good. I think in those choices that we make, we identify and we can reflect on what's most important to us, and that makes for rich stories, right? So as I meet with you all after this, later on and during the conference, those are the kind of conversations that I want to have. What are the peaks that you're optimizing for? What are the valleys that you had to create as you make these compromises? And so I think that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. And I think the same holds true as a brand. As we make these choices as organizations, as brands, that's sort of what shows who we are, what we stand for. And I think that's the reason why we as Cotopaxi, we continue to see 10 years in tremendous growth, right? We see an attraction of a much more diverse consumer base in terms of 60% of our consumers being female, about 55% of our consumer base being non-white, ethnically diverse, over 85% of our consumers under the age of 45 in an industry that's predominantly white, that's predominantly male, and that's aging. Average customer that walks in an REI is about 55 years old. And so that's my hope for all of us here, that we don't lament the choices that we have to make, the trade-offs that we have to make individually and in our organizations, but we recognize them as an opportunity to really get crystal on what matters most to us, of who we are, and then recognize the richness that comes with those choices and the stories that ensue from it. So I'll close here. Thank you again for having me.